Good afternoon, and holy shit, this is an emergency session of the Dark Nerd Avengers because there is a lot of dark stuff that we are going to be covering today. The news is relentless. It is mind-boggling, and we are going to try to make sense of it. Obviously, we are starting with an incomplete picture, but I think we know enough to start putting the pieces together. So Dahlia, Jen, Brian, I'm really glad you could be here. Exactly. We should all be looking like X-Men just about now. Not X-Men. I don't know what they're
Dark
called.
Avenger time, baby.
Yeah, sorry, Dark Nerd Avengers. Brian, let's start with you. What's the word on the beat down there?
Well, what we're waiting for, of course, is the release. There's been some pre-release of what was in the warrant, and we're looking at we're looking at a variety of charges for Donnie. And when it all shakes out, I mean, what we know now is that they were looking for violations of the Espionage Act, a letter that was sent to the president of France, the nuclear documents, and others. And it's just a shocking list of things that we now know that Donald Trump was hiding and trying. I don't know what he was going to do with them. Make money off of them, trade them for favors. But it had been asked for several times and hadn't been gotten. There's a lot of this morning among my friends in the DOJ. The biggest thing they have is relief that this was released so that everyone can see exactly what it is that they were going for.
Yeah.
And take away the doubt, by the way, and take away
Right, exactly.
And all the accusations.
And put a stop to the cynical and dangerous posturing on the right, who to a person decided once again to throw in their lot with Donald when once again they could have taken an off ramp from this fucking traitor, but hey, they're just going to have to live with their choices, I guess. Yeah, they have to be. They have to be. And let's see how that let's see how that plays out, because Dahlia, this is serious. And I'm not feeling relieved or anything. I feel horrified and sickened by, not that Donald did it, because no kidding, we knew that he would do his worst, but that he was allowed to, and that this has been spinning out for so long.
That's exactly right. The amount of systems failures that had to occur at every level of the system for us to get to the point that a former president is being looked at under the Espionage Act. I mean, is being scrutinized for the kinds of, obstruction, destruction, mishandling of documents that are so secret that I don't even understand the classification systems, and that at every level, the amount of breakdown that had to occur for us to get to this tells you how absolutely the pathologies are showing. We are now seeing at every level what had to break, and actually going forward, what needs to be corrected at every sort of systemic level. Because this is, I agree with you. I feel no spiking of the football vibe here. I feel utter disgust and horror that we came this perilously close and might already, have crossed over into imperiling national security in such a profound way, and that we're finding out about all of these system failures now is shocking.
Yeah, and we've been reminded consistently throughout. I think starting with the what is it called in 2016, the thing that happens before the general election, the primary. Oh, yeah. You see, my brain is totally scrambled by what's happening. That we can't rely on norms. We can't rely on basic human decency or a person's ability to feel shame or pinky swears. Everything needs to be codified. And as you said, Dahlia, it may be a little too late for some of that. So Jen, I know you've been sifting through some documents, and I think one of the things I'd like to do today, to the extent we can, is kind of help people understand um, what is, and also to the extent that we know, um, at what point do the defenses that we know Donald's been using so far fall apart? Like, I mean, again, I'm a layperson, but it would seem to me that even if you declassified a document, you aren't allowed to keep it in your fucking basement, and you aren't allowed to sell it to the highest bidder and breach national security, right, Jen?
You're totally on the money. I mean, you went right when we were talking about 18 USC 793. That's the one of the statutes. That's the espionage one. You make a really good point, which is it doesn't matter what the classification was. In other words, that statute doesn't, deal with the classification, whether it needs to be in a SCIF or it's top secret or it's compartmented. That statute makes it still a felony if these are these secrets that could be information related to the national defense. So there's nothing that's going to protect him in trying to claim he, declassified. But there's not the way he thinks that he can sort of unilaterally declassify nuclear secrets. That can't be done. There's a special process. So the bottom line is, I was not expecting this espionage charge. Nothing is about presidential records in these charges. And I have to say, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg would like a word at this moment.
Yeah.
And, I am just absolutely shaking because, I do a lot of my work around white collar crime, which is people may think it's just economic crime, but I define it more broadly the same way that the man who coined the term, Edwin Sutherland, did. And to me, what he defined white collar crime as, it's crimes committed by people of high status and community sort of respect in the course of their occupation. And to me, this falls within it. And the one thing about white collar criminals, they often happen to be white, not just wearing white collars, right, but people who, like Donald Trump, who are, white, wealthy, and well-connected, don't often get held accountable. And if we cannot hold this man accountable for espionage, we don't have the rule of law, period. And I am just a little bit freaked out, even though I'm in this nice, vacation spot. I'm on my vacation.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
I'm on a vacation, everybody. And it's, of course, working vacation. So yeah, it's my kind of vacation.
They always are.
Yeah. And Norm, I want to go to you because you have to leave. I don't know how long we're going to go, but I know you have to leave at 4. This is when you boil it down to its essence, this is all about impunity in some ways, isn't it?
It is. And I must say, I was just stunned at David Brooks's column today. The inanity and insanity of basically saying it doesn't matter what this man has done. It doesn't matter if he turned our most sensitive nuclear secrets over to Russia or to MBS. You can't, if you send him to jail, it's going to be the death knell of democracy. If this is the mindset of some of what we have in mainstream opinion and mainstream journalism, we're sunk. I want to make another point as well. I don't care whether he declassified or at which he didn't, even if he says he did. I don't care if he says that he pardoned himself before he left and put it in a drawer. The fact is, if we discover that he was, for example, turning over important information to MBS, and my guess is it's far more likely to involve the Saudis, where we know we have these links. We know there's a huge sum of money that's been transferred to the Trump family. We know that this golf tournament probably resulted in more money being turned over to him. And my guess is there are documents that involve blackmailing others that he's kept so that he could continue to have the ability to blackmail. I don't care whether they're classified or not. This this is like, if you watch The Manchurian Candidate, this is like the Arabian Candidate and the Siberian Candidate and the greatest traitor we've had in this country, including Benedict Arnold going back. And if you don't hold him to account, it's treasonous itself.
Yeah. It is. Sorry, I have to gather myself because
Yeah.
I'm so angry. I've been watching MSNBC off and on, and there was a New York Times reporter and another reporter. I mean, they sounded like they could have been from the New York Post. They were talking about this purely in political terms. And both of them were basically saying this is so great for Donald and the Republicans. And first of all, I think that's an absurd take on its face. But secondly, this is not about politics. I mean, we've been saying this. January 6th is not about politics. It's not
treason.
even. It's not about crime. It's about treason. Exactly.
That's
I mean,
yeah.
I've been saying, well, but it's in a class by itself. It's it's like saying like crimes against,
right?
When you say crime, you don't think treason or crimes against humanity.
No.
You think you got a speeding ticket or you mugged somebody, right?
No,
We're talking,
but Mary, when I think of your uncle, I think of crime.
right? But this puts all of his other crimes, with the exception of January 6th and the mass murder of 1 million people, in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
So you put those three together, or any one of them, in my view, on its own, he is the greatest traitor to this country.
Absolutely.
Since Mitch McConnell, Robert E. Lee, and Benedict Arnold, he's worse than all of them combined. So, Cliff, the next thing I want to touch on is, how do we? So frustrating, because this seems like if there's nothing else that we've been dealing with the last 4 years, like you would have thought this about January 6th, totally black and white, cut and dried. No, apparently it's more complicated than that, because we need to add politics in the mix. How do we combat this insanity? Because Norm, I'm not sure if you're talking about a different column, but Brooks had a column a couple of days ago that the title was "The FBI hands the 2024 election to Donald." I mean, seriously. So how do we combat that and remind people that the reason Merrick Garland had to give his press conference yesterday is because FBI agents' lives are being threatened, and a gunman inspired by Donald in January 6th tried to kill FBI agents and was himself was himself killed.
Yeah, I had to get off the highway because of that, by the way.
Oh, that's right. You're in Ohio.
Yeah, and I literally am. It's north of me in Cincinnati, where the FBI headquarters was, and I just happened to be driving up my son to a friend's house, and they were diverting everybody. That's a whole other conversation. When it comes to this, I think we need the people who are sitting right here, and hopefully people listening write for some pretty important publications. If that David Brooks view of things takes hold, we're done. I mean, we literally are done as a democracy. My background was in history, where I took a lot of years to then not write a dissertation. But what I can tell you is, this is not hard. The beer hall putsch becomes, Hitler eventually coming to power. People don't try these things, once. They don't, there's patterns to people's behavior. You brought up the guy a second ago, the FBI, the guy who tried to kill the FBI agents here. He was at January 6th, right? We should have been stopped after that. He wasn't. I don't know what the hell he was doing out free and wandering around, but he was. So guess what? He tried to kill people again. On a bigger level, it's what is clear is that if these guys are not punished, they're amoral. They have no conscience. This country, it's all been bullshit for 30 years or whatever now. It could not care less. This country is something you strip apart, and you take its parts and you sell it off the way I'm sure they've already done it with Saudi Arabia and giving them God knows what. So we need, the mainstream media has long now been killing us. We need every voice out there. We got people here who write for Salon and Slate and this and that, and the Daily Beast and what. Everybody needs to sort of make sure that they do their best to tell people history so people understand that it's not just Trump at this point. There's so many. The way they
never has been.
No, the way they went and grabbed Perry's phone. Well, it never has been just Trump in terms of how how crazy they are, how extremist they are, how, the rest. But now I think with the espionage, it's clearly not just Trump too. Who knows how many of these members of Congress are involved, or the Senate, who knew what he was doing, and didn't say anything or whatever. I mean, we really, really, really have to make it clear that if there's not a punishment for that January 6th, the union and some other things were dozens of people, dozens, if not scores, go to prison and lose their livelihoods and pay a price. We're done.
Yep.
Right. And Brian, I know you have an idea of how to combat the insanity, but before I get to you, I just want to say really quickly, part of what we need to do is remind the American people of the cost of all of this. And I mean that both literally and figuratively. Like literally yesterday, it was shutting down highways and disrupting people. I mean, I know in the grand scheme of things, that is not nearly as important as the fact that FBI agents got fired at, but it all, it creates chaos. It creates uncertainty. It creates fear. It has an economic cost, and I was saying this to Jen earlier, regardless of what happens punishment wise, and we will talk about this because I don't know, we need something to cheer ourselves up. I want every penny back that Donald stole from the American people for his fucking secret security, for his golf trips to his own clubs with which he enriched himself, for his children's Secret Service. I want it all back. And,
they don't got it. They don't got it, baby. They don't have that much money.
Well, then what were they doing? Allegedly.
Right.
Committing espionage. Anyway, Brian, what's your solution? And I want to get back to Norm because Norm has to go soon.
I think one of the things we have to do is keep it in perspective. And I try very often to get out of the bubble of the district and the bubble of these things. Just to, I have in-laws, for God's sakes, that are Trumpers, and they're even done with Donald Trump. I mean, I think we've turned a corner in this country. I think that this alone, what's going on, you're going to have his defendants and the people are going to adhere to him. But I think if we reach out and talk to people who are Trumpers and find out where they are before assailing them for where they've been, I think you'll find that some of them are on with just a little bit of reinforcement of what the actual facts are. I think there are plenty of people who are ready to go away from Donald Trump, as long as you don't beat them up for being stupid for being with Donald Trump. And for the rank and file, that's how you're going to get them away from the leadership that's in up to their butts and deeper. They're not going to get out. And Mark Meadows can go down. I don't care if he was a snitch that told everybody what was in the safe. He's culpable.
I don't think it was Mark Meadows. I don't think Mark.
Yeah,
Meadows
well, there are a lot of people who have. I'm just gigging him a little, but there are a lot of rumors about where it came from. But at the end of the day, there are people you will never separate from Donald Trump. To hell with them. Yeah. They're not worth wasting time on. But there are others you can say. But by the way, we're already in a minority. I mean, majority. We're the majority. They're the minority. Get out and vote, and this doesn't come back. But you got to stay active.
But Norm, one of the problems is, we're in the majority, but the system is so rigged in Republicans' favor that we barely have a majority. I mean, we're 50-50 plus one ish in the Senate. It's a handful of people in the House, and our system is so broken that we have over 140 active seditionists still governing us. So what do we do about that? Like, we don't even hold them accountable.
We're in a bad place in a whole host of ways. I was just looking back last week at the House and House races going forward. And, a part of the problem is the lawless behavior in 4 state legislatures that completely ignored, and other bodies, court orders. And now we're getting districts that are based on unlawful lines, but they're probably going to add 7 or 8 seats to Republicans. For Democrats to win the House, it's still a steeply uphill battle. And if we have these cultists running the House, what they're going to do to cut off funding for the Justice Department, to, try and hogtie Merrick Garland and other top officials by bringing them in on a regular basis and subpoenaing them, even if it's just the House. we're going to be in a worse position. And, you know, when I continue to see, so we have a system that's stacked against us with redistricting and gerrymandering, with the natural biases in the system that have been amplified because of the distortions in states, and now with a court putting its thumb on the scales and making it that much more difficult. But we also have this tribal world. And, you know, I go back to the Nixon era. I was around Washington when impeachment took place. Yeah, we divided. Yes, there were people who stuck with Nixon, including some to the bitter end. But the vast majority of Republicans in elective office, when they saw the facts put right in front of their faces, understood them and reacted. We're in a cult now where it doesn't matter what he's turned over to the Russians. They're going along with the cult. And I will make one final point, which is, let's say we get rid of this guy and he can't run again. Ron DeSantis, you know, or
It's worse.
take any of the others who might be a possibility. Kristi Noem, Tom Cotton. They look better.
You're missing the
They're
obvious.
thinner, they're smarter, but they're evil. They're just as evil. They'll turn us into an autocracy, just of a slightly different variety from what from where Trump was. So we got a lot more work to do, even if we follow this to its logical conclusion, and especially if we find out that he really has been turning over our most sensitive secrets, whether it's because he was blackmailed or because he could get more money out of it, or some combination of the two. And, you know, money makes as much sense as being blackmailed with this guy.
Yeah.
It's a bad place. But
Same.
anybody who thinks we're out of the swamp and back onto dry and fertile land, if it blows up in his face, doesn't understand what's happened to our politics in our country.
Well, clearly the media don't understand. I mean, it is
As big a
gobsmacking.
danger as anything, the
Right?
mainstream media. Yeah.
And you know what? I have to be honest. First of all, Jen just updated us. The judge has issued the order to unseal, so that's good.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. I think at this point, you know, as Brian said earlier, and I think a lot of us have been saying this for a very long time, forget about people who are so loyal to Donald that they just cannot be convinced. They are a waste of time. Those are the people who need to put back under the rock, you know, and
In
pay
jail
no
with
attention to. Well, I mean, just, you know, the cultists to go to the rallies and stuff like that. The Republican Party has proven itself to be so incredibly craven that we will see how they make espionage seem reasonable and patriotic. It is down to the media to help us set this right, Dahlia, because I don't know what other options there are other than elevating the voices of sane people who understand that this is not a normal election. These are not normal times. And the United States, I don't know that the United States has ever been in as much danger. And I'm including before the Civil War, by the way.
I think I want to add one. I'm never the optimist in these conversations, but I want to just add one, what I think might be a slight corrective to Norm's observation that there is an overarching structural problem, which is that we live in a minority rule system designed to be a minority rule system that is doing a really fantastic job of preserving minority rule, right? And we've talked about that multiple times before. You know, this requires meaningful democracy reform, to gerrymandering, and to, you know, the way the Senate works and the filibuster. Okay, let's bracket that. I think the one place I might diverge from Norm, and I think this is not trivial, Norm, tell me if I'm wrong, is that what is going to stop the DeSantises and the Hawleys and the Cruzes is accountability for Donald Trump. In other words, I don't disagree that if you kind of concede that this whole thing has been stupid Watergate, badly executed by sloppy lawyers making, you know, bad, crappy arguments that are going to come before us in 2024 when very good lawyers, right? We're already seeing very, very good lawyers representing Lindsey Graham. You know, people are willing to step in now and do what the crappy lawyers that were Rudy Giuliani and, you know, Sidney Powell did badly. And that's scary, right? That this is going to be done by white shoe lawyers in front of the Supreme Court next time, and not, you know, hissing conversations, trying to lean on Georgia legislatures. But I think the thing that could break that somewhat is accountability for now. And I really do feel that we're in a signal moment where, and I completely stipulate, Mary, that there is nothing to be done about the wackadoos that want to shoot up FBI offices. I mean, that ship has sailed. And I also agree with your initial framing, which is trying to mollify those people by not doing anything is insane. That's right. That's the definition of being in a hostage situation. But I think meaningful accountability, not just for Donald Trump, but for, I think the people, like, let's not forget Elaine Chao is right now speaking to the January 6th committee, right? I think accountability for all the enablers might actually do something to deter the not stupid Watergate that's coming. That's my hope. And I actually think the thing that we shouldn't elide today is that the Justice Department got the job done, mostly undetected by us, no fanfare. This is months of phenomenal FBI work that we are now seeing. And I think it's really worth saying, like, the system kind of held here, and the system holding is consequential going forward in ways that I just don't want to slide over.
No, absolutely. Mea maxima culpa to you, Merrick Garland. I mean, seriously, I was deeply worried and skeptical and sometimes cynical about what may or may not have been going on. And I mean, I think there was good reason. You know, Mueller handed him a roadmap for 10 charges of obstruction, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, lots of statutes of limitations coming and going. But clearly he had his eyes on a bigger prize. So, yes, that is something to be grateful for. But, Jen, it feels like we have been white knuckling this and hanging on by our fingernails for years now, because here and there, it's been one person. You know, it's been Cassidy Hutchinson, the then 23-year-old. It's been, you know, one department. It's so untenable for us to continue this way. And I agree completely. Accountability for all of them. But if we have a system that refuses to hold accountable people like Josh Hawley, and it sticks with, you know, the enablers only of Donald Trump, that's dangerous too. Don't get me wrong. I want them in prison forever. I want them impoverished. I want them to, you know, pay penance and, you know, whatever. But it is not enough.
I agree. And I just to put what's going on into that sort of January.
Jen, can you turn down your volume a little bit? It got very loud.
How's that?
I don't know.
Is that better?
I think so.
Okay, sorry. To put this all in context, because this is, of course, what's happening now, what we're looking at now, treason, is part of the same thing that we were looking at always before, which is this is a person and a political party that is willing, able, and has taken the reins of power to benefit and enrich themselves and not serve the public interest. And when we look at, you mentioned Josh Hawley, you know, the stream of, well, I mean, the everything January 5th investigation is doing is looking at an attempt to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power, to overthrow the government. They're all the same thing. It's a complete, you know, not believing in the rule of law, violating laws right and left since he has been young, is what Donald does. But it's also, you know, he emerged from this swamp, and not the swamp he's talking about, the swamp of elite impunity, of Republicans wanting to take office just so they could lower everybody's taxes. And then, oh, while we're here, why don't we sell out
Rich people.
the United States? It's all the same thing. It's like, what is government good for? You know, government is good for, one, goodies that we can steal, graft, and making sure the private sector doesn't have to follow any rules and the rich don't have to contribute to the welfare of others. So it's all part of this, absolutely the same story. I mean, Grover Norquist said he wanted to, make the government so small that he could, drown it in the bathtub. Well, Donald doesn't want to do that. He wants to make it big enough so he can siphon off all the goodies and sell them to his friends and enrich himself. But it's all part of the same shtick. It's undermining democracy. It's undermining, self-governance. And if this, this is really where I am so glad Merrick Garland wasn't fucking around and he drew a line in the sand. Now let's see what happens next. I think there is more to come. I think this is the tip of the flipping iceberg.
I think that is true. I mean, how could it not be, right? There is so much that we've been speculating about. I don't know if that meant you want to say something, Brian, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, I mean,
why did I even ask?
I just wanted to quickly come to the defense of some of the mainstream media. We're taking quite a hit. However, since Donald Trump came into office, I know of many reporters who have tried valiantly to get the word out. And I'm not tooting my horn. I'm tooting everybody
Brian,
else.
I'm not talking about. I'm not
criticizing anyone. I'm just saying we need. Sometimes the truth is there, but the problem is that we have so many bandwidths that it's so easy to get information. The real information is harder and harder to find. That's my point. I'm not taking anybody to task. I'm saying it's because of the times that we live in and how much information is available. It is very difficult to find true information anymore. And it takes an extra effort on all of our part to do it that some of us, I don't have the time for it. I mean, at some point in time,
Most people don't.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest problems I think that we're having with this, because we've known for a while who Donald Trump is and what he's about. And my God, Mary, since you came out with what you said, with what happened to Michael Cohen, with what happened from the moment he walked out, at that time he made fun of a handicapped reporter. We've known what Donald Trump is about. And the problem is there are so many people who are still willing to defend it because they have something personal to gain from it. Whether it's their misplaced loyalty and they're afraid to admit it, or they're monetarily tied to it. And once he goes down, I think people will begin to run away from him. And I think this is the beginning of the end for him.
But again, that's the problem. They should not be allowed to run away from him, is what I'm saying. That is not.
No,
that is not the way this thing ends. That is not the way this thing. That's the way this country ends. That is not the way it has to end. And when I say, look, I'll say corporate media and failures to regulate the internet. I'm not talking about reporters or journal. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about some of them. But anyway, so it's just shorthand for corporate media. Media that puts profit over actual news, and our failures, our legislative failures to grapple with what the internet has become. So so I just want to move on to something else that Jen was talking about, and Cliff, you were talking about history. There's an unbroken line, and this is one of the things when I first started writing my first book that kind of blew my mind. The through lines are just kind of extraordinary. From my grandfather to Roy Cohn to the New York media to the banks to the Republican Party, Donald has skated. Oh, CNN fired Jeffrey. Why did they hire him back? What was he masturbating while they were talking about the
computers?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Okay, anyway, and then there's the unbroken line. I mean, we could go back to Robert E. Lee, but let's keep it in more common. Of course, he says he quit. Let's keep it in modern times. We go from Nixon to Reagan to Bush to other Bush.
Gingrich in there too, very important.
I'm talking about presidents.
Okay.
To Bush to Donald. Anyway, people think that somehow. Hi, Wash. Oh, yes, we can let Waj in because he hasn't committed espionage today. So
Yet.
you're good. Can you turn down your
Days
volume? It's a
young.
little loud. So anyway,
They still young.
I just wanted to respond quickly to what
no,
James.
can I just let me finish what I'm saying?
I'm sorry.
Because
Go ahead.
I'm, I just want to get this out of the way. So there's an unbroken line from one corrupt Republican president to the next. And I'm sorry, Richard Nixon was not held accountable. He was allowed to resign. He was allowed to rehabilitate himself. And he was impeached he had to resign over the wrong thing. He didn't have to resign because he basically condemned tens of thousands of American boys to death because he made South Korea postpone Johnson's peace talks. I mean, Jesus Christ. So, and remember, what's his name? Ford pardoned Robert E. Lee, and Carter pardoned Jefferson Davis. I always say Jefferson Sessions, but Jefferson Davis. So there's
Davis.
and thank you, another unbroken line, and that is what the American people don't understand. They think that their parties are both the same. And Cliff, this is the one thing that blows my mind. You look at a chart of the indictments per administration. I think for all three Dems, it's like 2, and for the Republicans, it's 1 billion. You look at job creation, you look at the economy, and the numbers are always on the Democrat side. What the fuck do we need to do to change the narrative? And I'm not talking about messaging here. I'm talking about pure facts that, I don't care what anybody says about Biden. He created he created millions and millions of jobs. The economy's doing well, all et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do we do?
Well, I want to start and just quickly say, like what Jen was saying before was so important about, various Republicans and I mean, look, the simple fact is that if Trump goes down at this point, there's so many, I think Norm was saying this too, there's so many evil people in the Republican Party, because the point is that it became like flypaper. When you talk about, for like every evil person, right? Like every faction, to use, James Madison Federalist 10 language, everybody who's got an axe to grind, who's got a resentment, who's got an issue where they're an extremist, they've seen themselves in the Republican Party. I mean, have you ever seen the video from like when Ted Cruz was 18? I mean, did you ever see that one where he's sitting there and he says, "I want to take over the world"? He's the spookiest motherfucker. Sorry, NPR, if you're listening. He's this.
Yeah, how dare you, Cliff? Oh my God,
know.
that's so much worse than being an evil motherfucker.
It really is. Cursing and
that might be funny to you, motherfucker, but
exactly. And that's what my problem is now. And that's the problem with the Republican Party, is that if all these other folks don't go down for this too, it's not just pardoning Trump. If every Hawley, Cruz, I mean, they're all, it's like this collection of like misfit toys, right? It's like if you said the purge is taking place in this one auditorium one night, and everybody who showed up, that's the GOP now.
Right. Well, it's misfit toys who also happen to be serial killers.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, because I could sit here right now and everybody here knows I could, and I could name one after another off the top of my head that are people that are not quite right, that are viciously evil. And that's not even counting the people that are like the Secretary of State nominee for the Republicans in Michigan, who thinks you can get sexually transmitted diseases from demons, right? Like, she's a real person and she's their nominee. So
Cliff, are you saying that you favor the GOP as a method to collect all the loonies that we can then throw out?
It is one way of doing it. I'm just making the point that this needs to be so expansive if we're going to get our country back. It needs to be so extensive. The number of people that are disqualified from office, that go to prison, that lose their financial livelihood, that suffer for not just attaching themselves to Trump, attaching themselves to Mitch McConnell, attaching themselves to these other grifters like
Kevin McCarthy.
Yes, exactly. And because if it doesn't, that'll be wonderful. I'll be as happy. No, I can't say I'll be as happy as you, Mary, because you've been through things. But I'll be one of the happier people, having grown up in New York and seen Donald Trump, from the day I was born, almost, in newspapers, and the disgustingness that was him and whatever. But if Ted Cruz becomes the next president, he's every bit as amoral as Donald Trump is, and so is Josh Hawley, and so is Tom Cotton, and so is Noam, and so is Abbott, DeSantis. I can go list, and so we need to make, again, I guess let me summarize it this way. It's not Donald Trump that's evil and awful. It's the Republican Party. It's the Republican Party.
Well, he is too.
Party.
But
we need to be talking about, and I hate to throw this as a branding exercise, but their brand needs to be fucking destroyed.
Well, look, yeah, and that's true. And watch, one of the things that
doing it.
One of the things that I was thinking about as Cliff was talking is, you know what? I don't want to talk about branding. I don't want to talk about charisma, but here we are. And we do, because they are going to be spinning like tornadoes to change the subject, as I said earlier, to make espionage seem cool and patriotic. And I just realized, like, I'm so hyped up. I apologize. I haven't had any caffeine. I'm just so angry that I don't know what to do with all this negative energy that I feel like we've all been living with for 6 years now. And it's like mind blowing that this horrible, horrible human being has been allowed to take us to this very dark, and I don't mean dark Nerd Avenger place. I mean dark, terrifying place. So, the only thing about when Cliff was listing all these potential, Republican candidates, and it could still be Donald for all we know, because again, it'll give him street cred for some people. DeSantis et al., they don't have the charisma that Donald has, and no matter what we think of him, he does have it.
Yeah, so I'm writing an op-ed right now for Washington Post called "Espionage: Why It's Good for America," and there's going to be another one, "Why Espionage Will Make Donald Trump Win Again." That's for the New York Times. So you have every right to be frustrated, and some people who are listening to us in the audience, they might think I'm being snarky, but those are almost verbatim headlines that have come out in some major papers. Because going back to your original point, Mary, I know people might not like this and they might roll their eyes, but to explain the phenomenon that we're in, where there's so much crimey activities that happen again and again and again so blatantly by our elected officials, by Republican presidents, by Ronald Reagan, who conveniently forgot about the Iran-Contra affair, by Richard Nixon, who crimed openly and should be in jail but got pardoned, by the fact that, we have romanticized criminal traitors to the United States of America who wanted slavery and lost a battle. I mean, that's how white privilege exists, is that losers who are traitors to the country get statues. Like, anyone who says white privilege doesn't exist, I'm like, you know what I would have to do to get a statue? Meanwhile, you're a white guy who was a traitor to this country, wanted to enslave people, and lost the battle. You have schools named after you. And you have to kind of historically connect the dots, is that this is part and parcel of America.
Usually the schools we don't want to go to, but you're right.
Yeah, but like those who are wealthy and those who are white have a different standard that is applied to them. They escape accountability. Yeah. They escape the arm of the criminal justice system that crushes people of color and those who are poor. And many of us, oftentimes, when we make the analogy, can you imagine if a Muslim did this? Or can you imagine if a black person did this? Can you imagine if Obama did this? Can you imagine if a Muslim attacked
the only Muslim that can get away with it is MBS?
Yeah, only MBS. Only MBS is the only Muslim who can get away with it. Brian's correct right now. But can you imagine if a Muslim attacked the FBI office and the Muslim was on the radar and the Muslim was posting this stuff on social media, and then Muslim commentators, me and Mehdi Hasan and Ali Velchi, were spinning it in favor for the guy and making him out to be the victim? What would happen? And I mentioned this because the frustration that you are articulating is the frustration felt by so many Americans who have been on the wrong side of privilege. That's why, in a way, we feel almost, we're cynical but hopeful. Trump will get away with it. We know he'll get away with it. He's always gotten away with it. He's a rich white man. He's been comforted by wealth, protected from the presidency and his whiteness. Of course, he could potentially commit espionage against America, and that will be spun into making him seem to be the hero. Whereas Obama wears a friggin' cat suit, and somehow he's a Muslim who prays to Mecca and is the enemy of America. So this is one of those situations where it's so egregious, and this is where it gives me a little bit of hope, Mary, to maybe go towards something hopeful. Trump is so recklessly stupid, so brilliantly talented in incompetence that it is so egregious, from Georgia to the election interference to January 6th to the criming in New York, and now to the fact that even after he was warned and told, hey, can you please bring back these classified documents? He goes, no, I won't do it. And then, like an idiot, he goes on, he releases a fundraiser email today. Did you guys read the fundraiser email? Openly,
nuclear
Five
codes?
of them. Who are you kidding? I
So
get them
it's one
every
of those-
hour from him.
yeah, it's one of those situations where he has set himself up. Let me put it this way: as a Muslim, as a student of U.S. history like you, Mary, as a man of color, I don't expect him to go to jail because he's a rich white Republican man. Okay.
Well, also, I
really
think it's the office that creates
Yeah.
complications.
Well, also the example you gave of Jefferson Davis and Robert Lee is on point. Nothing happened to them. However, the win here is this is so egregious, and Democrats have the upper hand right now, and they have the House, and they have the Senate, and they have Joe Biden, and we've never seen anything like this. That I believe this will weaken him, and there is a glorious opportunity for America to get this right. They should prosecute him, because if they prosecute him, it will right the wrongs of the past 200 years, and it will further show Republicans there is a penalty for this type of behavior.
And
And
why?
if they lose the election, last thing I'll say is if they lose the election, some of them will say, "Oh shit, we have to dial back." But I
We've
agree
gone
with
too
Cliff.
far.
The entire right-wing infrastructure has to be burned to the ground.
Yeah,
That's
it
why I
absolutely does. And I would just add, it's not. I know he's not an intelligent person, although he does have certain skills that none
Correct.
of us would want to have.
Conniving.
It's the narcissism. I'm going to go to Dahlia. Dahlia has something really quick to say about espionage, and you can take more than 3 seconds.
No, I just want to say one quick thing, which is I think, and so many folks have said in this conversation how bad the media has managed, the last 6 years. And one of the ways that we really fucked it up was that we forget that the entirety of the Mueller report was started with an event of, Mike Flynn opening himself up to being blackmailed by foreign entities for lying. The Mueller report does not start because of collusion with Russia. It starts because Mike Flynn lies, right, about contacts with Kislyak, and then the lie is repeated, and then Mike Flynn is susceptible to being blackmailed. And we just dropped the ball on telling that story, on why that mattered, on what it did to national security, about why that was, in the view of Sally Yates, a 5-alarm fire that White House counsel just shrugged off. Don McGahn was like, we're good. What does it matter if he lies? And so I think we have an opportunity now. And then everything that spun out into the Mueller report, we forgot to tell the story in the press of how badly what Mike Flynn did could have damaged national security forever. And I just think now we have an opportunity to correct for that by explaining that this isn't something that if you did it, they would let you be. They're going after Donald Trump. It turns out if any of us sold nuclear secrets to the Saudis, they probably should come after us. And so now
weird, right?
Yes.
Really good time for the media to frame this not as a galactic battle between Merrick Garland and Donald Trump, WrestleMania, who outmanned who and who's smarter. It's a really good time to go back to the Espionage Act of 1917 and try to explain to people why opening yourself up to blackmail by foreign entities or by trading nuclear secrets is really a bad thing for all of us. And so I just want to sort of pan back and help people focus on the big picture of what is at stake here. It's not just a smackdown between their Bill Barr and our Bill Barr and who's politicizing the Justice Department. It's that every single one of us is in mortal danger if nuclear secrets are being sold for parts.
If I can,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's the big point right there. It's not a national story. It's an international story. And why I think, Waj, you're going to see him prosecuted for this and maybe we'll see jail time because the worm has turned. 2022 is not 1862 as much as Donald Trump would like to think it is, or even 1942 as many of the Nazi sympathizers would like it to be. The simple fact of the matter is it's 2022, and he doesn't have the ability to hide from his white privilege anymore. But more importantly, the white overlords, if you want to go there, that run the country are pissed off at one of their own for pissing away secrets to people that shouldn't go there. So it's his own ruling class that's going to come down on him. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to be smacked down like you haven't seen anyone smacked down in this country before, for the danger that he put not all of us in, but them. And they protect their own, baby. So I'm telling you, I think there's going to be retribution. I just don't see how at the end of this, Donald Trump is either going to fade away because of health concerns. That's the excuse he'll give us. And he'll run away and never be seen again, maybe to Russia, God only knows. Or he dies of them, or he gets jailed, or he is completely, and what would be best is if he was completely forgotten by history and wasn't even a bump or a blip in a path, because all he cares about is his ability to be known, to be seen, and to be remembered. He's the most shallow human being I've ever met in my life. He has tried to destroy this country simply for his own use. There has never been a more useless man in the history of our country. And by God, I'm standing at the 50-yard line cheering the day he gets caged up, put in the cuffs, and walked in orange into the jail cell. I'll be right there. I promise you I won't miss it.
Yeah. I think it's lovely to think history will forget him, but I think it's highly unlikely because of,
I know it.
All the crimes committed to get him in the Oval Office, the crimes committed during the Oval Office, including the million people dead, and this espionage, which, some of us could have seen coming, maybe not to the specifics, but we knew, everybody here has known all along that he's capable of anything. To enrich himself, to increase his power, even if it's just for self-aggrandizement. And, Jen, you were speaking to somebody earlier about, and this was before we knew about espionage. So I'm curious to know if your opinion has changed in terms of what may or may not happen if Donald is indicted and if he's convicted, what may or may not happen to him. But I just want to say quickly, the worst thing that you could do to Donald Trump is put him in a room with no mirrors and no internet and no access to any kind of media. And no, I'm completely serious. I mean, I think
I have one thing.
I can readily see it.
No,
That's why I'm
no,
We should
listen,
put pictures up of Ron DeSantis all over the room.
I mean, I
Totally
can't
different.
advocate for that because it would be cruel. It would be a deeply cruel thing. No, I'm not. I'm
I
being
mean,
completely serious. It would be a
Yeah.
deeply cruel
Justice,
thing to
baby.
do. But if he's Donald Trump in a room by himself, ceases to exist. Basically,
I
that's
think,
what we're dealing with.
although it's my fantasy in a sort of sick way that he would actually have a mugshot in which he cannot wear his comb over or makeup, I don't see that likely happening.
Oh.
But when he is indicted for
Do we
something,
really
which-
want to say that? I'm not so sure.
when he is indicted for something and when he is convicted of something or pleads, I think he will be confined to home confinement or something like that. I do not see him being in a public facility.
Well, that's
I think,
partially because of the Secret Service that would be required. You can't imprison the Secret Service.
yeah, I just don't think it. I don't think it that, but I do
Well,
think
maybe some of them.
I do see, unless he pulls, a sort of disappearing act, which I also can't see him do for the reasons Mary said, which is he needs people. He needs to be validated. He needs to be reflected back. So I think there's a lot between today and whenever anything like that happens. And I just don't think I think we're kind of, I know we've said this for years, but this is uncharted territory. And, as this news kind of, I've been steeped in it for a while, I'm utterly horrified that this is what I just, even though I thought he would sell stuff, to see him actually do what I thought he would do, what makes me so deeply upset is the cowards who are planning their talking points now. I drove by, everyone's Twitter feed, silence from so many of them. Nothing will make, you really cannot regrow your spinal cord once it has been surgically sucked out in exchange for money and power. These people will never grow spines. And I think we need to call them out. And I'm just disgusted with all of his enablers because we could see this coming. It's here. Radio silence.
Yeah, that is one of the more. Again, it's not surprising because what else do we expect? I just want to, in terms of Donald's potential punishments, like house arrest at Bedminster. Like, how would that change his life? Like, he that's what he does anyway, So I think keeping him one of his golf courses is his life right now. It would need to be like keeping him away from technology and attention. That's the only way we get any semblance of just punishment, because obviously he's not. He will never, as far as I know, go to prison. Although we don't know how much more serious this could be. I mean, I don't know. Does anybody here know when the line between espionage and treason is crossed? And I think we know what the punishment for treason is.
Well,
Yeah, ask the Rosenbergs.
Well, I
do actually know the line. If you care to know, it has to be an enemy, right? The difference is espionage is taking damaging information that could be damaged to the U.S. and sharing it with anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Foreign power. Here with treason, it needs to be an enemy.
This is the benefit.
I'm sorry, meaning someone we're at war with, right? And I don't know.
This is the benefit of having nerds on the Nerd Avengers, especially a law professor. So, thank you, Jen. But I think one of the situations is you can get in the nitty gritty, but the fact that people are saying traitor, right? I think the fact that we have to mainstream this word traitor, and I think Democrats, and again, this is not knocking on Democrats, this is an opportunity. Again, we mentioned this last week.
Yep.
You are like, this is the manna from heaven right now. 3-4 months before the election, as Trump is most likely going to also run again in 2024. The Republicans, as we talked about on your show earlier this week, are painted themselves into a corner, Mary. They're stuck. The MAGA monster has devoured the Republican Party on abortion, on contraceptives, on Social Security. They're locked in, and they're all in with Trump. And this is a pattern, right? This is not a one-off. I don't know if you guys have already discussed it in the first 30 minutes, but remember the fact that he was with Abe openly talking about the missile launch and people were taking photos. Remember the fact that he disclosed classified information to a Russian foreign minister and betrayed our allies. Remember the fact that he just casually tweeted out that Iranian facility. Oh, and now he did this. This is a traitor and a threat to America. And I think when it comes to messaging, you don't really need to even get too much in the weeds. Well, espionage, according to the statute, is meh. It's like Donald Trump is a traitor. And those who support him are betting a traitorous president who's willing to sell out our country to the highest bidder. He's a criminal. No one's above the law. And on top of that, you got Georgia and New York and the January 6th Commission. And on top of that, you got Republicans taking away our freedoms. I believe this is one of those situations where, going back to what Brian was saying, we're skeptical, but we're hopeful. So I am hopeful that this is so egregious and just an onslaught of news that we're getting one after another. I mean, was it just yesterday that Letitia James talked about what was happening in New York, or just 2 days ago?
Amendment. Yeah.
Maybe it was 2 months ago.
Baby.
Time is a flat circle. That I think this could bring him down. And Cliff and I, for those who are watching, the Nerd Avengers, I'll admit, actually have a parallel conversation on chat, which is equally as amusing. And Cliff imagined Donald Trump living out the rest of his days in a luxury hotel in Saudi Arabia. And I said he'll be doing dances with swords with Mohammed bin Salman. What a beautiful ending for the man who passed the Muslim ban. That might be how it ends.
Perfect one. I was just thinking that's how Idi Amin lived out his final days. And Trump seems very similar in certain ways.
Well, and the frightening part of all of it, when we sit here and consider what we're actually considering, is the deflation of the American ego, culture, and psyche, which had come to believe that it dominated the world. And now we're seeing that we're no more different than some of the very worst people that we've criticized. And we're having a hard time coming to terms with the fact that we need to do better. And that's the bottom line with all of us, is no sense of humor to what we've screwed up. no ability to accept people that don't believe as we do, and bitter and always angry about something. And that's the gift of Donald Trump.
Right.
Because
the point I've
he's
always tried to make is that there's
that gave us that wonderful ability to do it. He put it out there and he dominated it. Hate,
Right.
fear, and disgust.
the point I've always tried to make is the way I know that there's no American exceptionalism is that conservatives have made sure there's no American exceptionalism.
Yeah.
They've ensured that we don't have health care like every other country, that we don't have safety in our schools from guns. You know, I could go on the list. They have made sure, and they always told me that they weren't the patriots they claimed to be. Quite obviously, they couldn't give a damn about America, as they've ensured that we are the exception in so many categories where we've fallen behind every other democracy. So this is just another one now. Cross this one off the list. We've had a dictator as president who violated the Espionage Act, and yes, is a traitor. We have that too.
Yeah, and Dahlia, that is one of the reasons we need to control this narrative. And like I said earlier, I don't want to it's not all about messaging, but it is about framing. And we talked about this a long time ago, how one of the things we need to do is reclaim certain words and concepts like patriotism, the flag, what that stands for, what it should stand for, what America is supposed to be, never has been, and what the Republican Party wants to take us farther and farther away from. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Donald Trump is first of all, I think we need to redefine treason. I think espionage in certain circumstances is treason, but he's a traitor. Anybody who stands with him is a traitor and un-American and unpatriotic.
I think that's,
to stand with him.
I think that's right. And I think, Waj used the word boxed in, and I think that's the word we have to really center here, is that every single person who came flying out the gate on Monday screaming, that we should defund the FBI and that every single person who's a law enforcement officer involved in this is a traitor, and that just snot out your nose insanity of like the FBI planted this. Like this is the stuff of like Boris and Natasha. This is so profoundly dumb. And the people who were making those arguments without knowing what was in the warrant, without knowing what those boxes of
who are literally saying defund the police.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Lives Matter, except when they don't, and also that
just practically never.
This could happen to you if you sell nuclear secrets. So
it should.
And I think that one of the sort of takeaways here, and I think so many folks have said this, better than I will, but that you have a party who is so enthralled to Donald Trump that they were ready to leap to his defense and make these like insane, spurious arguments without knowing the facts. They could have just shut their mouths for 3 days and waited to see what was in the warrant and waited to see what was being investigated and what federal crimes he was on the hook for. But instead, they were just saying this crazy crap. And I think that it tells you that now they're boxed in. And that is the silence that Jen's talking about, right? Like all of these enablers who literally have their pants around their ankles trying to figure out how they're going to get through the weekend. And I think one thing to really think about, they don't literally have their pants around their
the typical Republican day.
Some of them might.
But I think that one of the things, and I think it's just so important in terms of messaging, is that it may entirely be the case that we just gave them enough rope to hang themselves. And again, I think we just have to be going back to what Norm said when we started. We have to hive off. There is a problem of radicalized, violent vigilantes who are going to shoot up the FBI in Cincinnati. And that is a huge problem. And stochastic terror is a huge problem. And this is the 5-year anniversary of Charlottesville. And for those of us who lived through it, like, we told you so. This was coming. Yep. But I think we have to hive off all of that and recognize this for what it is, which is a real opportunity, as you're saying, Mary, to message that when like the country is being stripped and sold for parts and that we are all in danger for it, And the folks who gathered around him and said whatever he says is true just look stupid right now. Let's just take the W. Let's take the win.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to wrap up soon. I just want to go around one more time really quickly, just for quick last words. Jen?
Lock him up.
Fair enough. Brian?
Wow. Pay attention. The biggest thing that's going to happen to this country is between now and midterm election day. So stay alert and stay in touch, and be cognizant of the source of your news, because at the end of the day, you've got to make the decision, not any of us. You got to make it for yourself. And I think that if people follow the facts and people are involved, things will turn out just right. And if we don't, well, we're all screwed. And that's the end of the American experiment. So take your pick.
Yeah. Cliff?
Just Republicans chose Donald Trump over you. They're traitors.
Yeah. Walsh?
Trumpism will outlast Trump. Trump is merely the avatar. And even if Trump goes down, we still have to contend as a nation with a radicalized, weaponized force that is willing to burn it all down to maintain power. The way they keep winning is by working the refs, bad faith victimhood, violence, and intimidation. They are the minority. We are the majority. The majority, whenever it flexes and organizes and pushes back at local levels and national levels, we win. Whenever we put pressure on our institutions to do better, we win. Case in point yesterday, Washington Post had a terrible headline. Pressure came, they changed the headline. It was for once that we mimicked the behavior of bad faith actors, but we actually did it to expand this thing called democracy, to have truth, to have accountability. So in these moments when cynicism and apathy are rampant, realize that we have the numbers, and the numbers have to join together and flex. And as Brian and others said, this is an inflection point for this country. And I do believe if we play our cards right, if we are relentless, if we're passionate, if we don't give up, we will see some major changes in 2022 and 2024, and we can take back this country from a radicalized minority, and we will no longer kneel to the rage of white supremacy. That is my hope.
Dahlia?
I think for the last 6 years, we thought the rule of law was self-reinforcing, that these soft norms and values and, the ideas that lived in the interstices of the law were in fact the law. And what we learned, thanks in no small part to Donald Trump, is that none of this is self-reinforcing. Right. And that if the rule of law is going to prevail, every single one of us is going to have to freaking pick up an oar and be a part of, getting us there. And I think that this has been, it's just such a crack up that I'm the sunny optimist today. But I think this has been a just absolutely transcendently good week for the rule of law. Does
Agreed.
not mean Donald Trump is going to jail. Does not mean he's going to jail, but it does mean that the system kind of held this week, and we all have to be a part of bolstering the institutions of law that got us here.
Absolutely. I agree with you, and that is something to be incredibly grateful for. But, again, we've had so many close calls. One thing I'd say is codify everything going forward. No more norms and traditions and relying on people's decency and ability to feel shame. And remember, this is a very long time coming. The Republicans have refused to look at the dangers of white male domestic terrorism for decades. That is this country's greatest threat, other than Donald, of course. The entire Republican Party, we lay this at their feet. And, if we want to save what's worth saving and make better those things that need to be improved, it will take every single one of us being relentless and keeping our heads up and not letting them steal one more fucking thing from us. So on that note, thank you, Cliff Schechter, Waj Ali, Brian Karam, Jen Taub, Dahlia Lithwick, Norm Ornstein. I am, as always, am so incredibly grateful to all of you, your input, and you're helping us make sense of the impossible to wrap our heads around sometimes. I can't think of anybody else I'd rather be with during these deeply troubled times. Thank you, Dark Nerd Avengers.
Mary, before we leave, can we just give a shout out to your exquisite ninja reference last night? It just made me proud. It was like a tear. I'm like, why do I like Mary? I don't care about anything else, but the fact that she made a ninja reference on live television, I'm like, there's just one tear of pride. So I just
Thank you.
give a shout out to that.
I was more happy that I got the word heuristic in there, but okay, whatever.
That was also good. Ninja first, then heuristics, but that pure nerd Avenger. It was like beautiful.
Well, coming from you, Waj, that's incredibly meaningful. So thank you all so much, and
Thanks a lot.
for everybody watching, thank you, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe.
Take
Be
care.
kind.
Have a good vacation, Jen.
Bye.